workplace reflects wider society. Not everybody in society, let alone in the workplace, feels comfortable to metaphorically raise their hand. My door is open is a great phrase. We hear it a lot and it's written about in books, but how many people walk through that door? Not everybody does. What you do not want as a senior leader is your initiatives to be torpedoed by resistors. As a leader, your role is ultimately to drive your organization forward, to change it, to transform it, to enable it to flourish in the future. If your organization doesn't change, it won't survive, and you need people on board to enable that change to succeed.
Welcome to another episode of Team Anywhere, where CEOs, leaders, and experts at building teams,
companies,
organizations,
and amazing cultures share how to lead from anywhere in the world. I'm your co-host on the East Coast, Ginny Bianco Mathis.
And I'm your co-host on the West Coast, Mitch Simon. And we invite you to join us to Team Anywhere. Hello and welcome to another episode of Team Anywhere. I'm your host on the West Coast of California, Mitch Simon. And today on the podcast, we have Ollie Lingwood-Craddock, CEO of Rungway and an expert in business transformation. Rungway is an employee listening platform that enables leaders to continually get ahead of emerging issues and drive organizational change. Rungway connects employees to scale and understand emerging issues, get alignment on what matters most, and create real change by moving quickly on priority issues. Today, we will discuss the importance of effective communication and authentic dialogue with employees, how to unlock hidden insights from people data, and how to build a more inclusive and engaged workforce. That's a lot. So welcome, Ollie. How are you?
Very good. Thanks, Mitch. Thanks for having me.
Great. And as you can tell, this podcast is with Ollie in the UK. So tell us, first of all, Rungway is a employee listening platform. Don't know what that is. So what is it? What is Rungway really?
What is it? Rungway is it is a platform, so there is technology, but there is also service attached to the way we work with our clients. But it is a means where individuals in a company can ask questions, raise ideas, and raise issues in their own words, in their own time, with free text, and build up a picture for the leaders of that company in terms of what's really going on in their organization. So it is organic. It is not based on questions and getting responses back. So it starts to show you really what's happening in your company in a way that other mechanisms don't.
So it's like the old suggestion box. Is that it?
Exactly. And so we work with large organizations, so very large enterprises. So imagine a suggestion box at scale. Imagine that for 10,000 people or 70,000 people, as some of our clients are. And how would you go through all of those suggestions? So what we do with our technology and our team is pick out the 2 or 3 things that are those emerging issues, the sparks before they become a bomb, in terms of maybe the kind of change initiative you're trying to lead, which you have a sense isn't going well. You hear rumors that it's not working right, but you don't know why. And so what we can do by analyzing all of that text in terms of the discussions about key issues, we can give clients a real sense of why. So we help them. What do they need to focus on? Who is impacted by it? Why are they impacted in their own words, which is the why is really critical. And then what you should do about it and the impact you then have off the back of that in terms of sentiment and advocacy, ultimately towards your big transformation.
Great. And so you are the CEO of Rungway. First, why is it called Rungway, and how did you get to leading this company?
Yes, I did not start Rungway. So the founder, Julie, who still works in the team and works with a lot of our clients. So Julie Chakravarti started Rungway a few years ago now. But from her experience, she wanted to create a community of kind of supporting individuals to help them level the rung. And it's all about the point that in large organizations, in any organization, there is a reality that a lot of people don't raise their hand, don't feel comfortable to do that. And therefore that organization misses out on their ideas, the reality of their experience in the company, and potentially issues that are going on in the company that they won't know about. So Julie created a community, initially an open community, which is to level the rungs, hence the name Rungway. And from there, we've evolved into an organization which helps leaders of companies at scale connect into their employees, understand what's happening, and enter dialogue efficiently with them to move forward and take people with them on that journey.
And what's your journey to get to leading a listening platform? Because I'm always very interested in how people get to something which is actually rather new and different and exciting.
So I guess I've done a very eclectic variety of jobs in the past. I think prior to Rungway, I've worked more in the learning industry, the tech learning industry. So relative similar space but not overlapping. And in looking for my next opportunity, I met Julie, the founder, and she talked me through some of the impact that Rungway has on both individuals and on organizations, and how it brings more people into those conversations in companies in an inclusive way. That means you in ways you otherwise wouldn't hear from them, and some of the statistics around that are amazing. And that sold me on the impact that Rungway can have across big organizations, and I fell in love with it off the back of that.
Okay, so I got to ask because we are I'm sure you and I both promote authenticity and honesty and transparency in a company. And wouldn't a lot of people say, well, if a company uses Runway, it's quote unquote obviously there's a problem because you've got to go to your employees and say everything needs to be anonymous. Versus, isn't the ideal that you would have employees come forward not being anonymous and be able to be authentic and transparent and to speak their piece? So I'm wondering that, and I'm sure you've heard this before.
Yeah.
How do you move through that conversation?
I think we do hear that a lot. I guess a key point is some of the organisations we work with are some of the best employees in the world. It is not to say we only work with companies where there is a problem. And I think a really important point in that point around probably leadership, which I know you talk about a lot, is that the workplace reflects wider society, and not everybody in society, let alone in the workplace, feels comfortable to metaphorically raise their hand in a group situation, and so we see that colleagues of color are 3 times more likely to post anonymously than other colleagues. We see in the APAC region that women have only ever posted anonymously in the entire history of Rungway, and it's the differences in behaviour reflect wider society, and so I quite commonly talk and I know from my experience of leading a business that not everybody will come to me and speak to me. My door is open is a great phrase, and we hear it a lot, and it's written about in books. But how many people walk through that door? Not everybody does, and probably the same people do. And so, therefore, if you rely on that open door mentality, you hear from the same people, which means you hear from a subset of your organization. You know, why don't you step outside your normal? What I say to you've got to step outside your normal network to know what's going on across your entire company, and to understand the reality of that. And as a leader, that's your job. You need to know the good and the bad. Does that help in terms of that context? We talk about that a
Yeah,
lot.
it does. It's the necessary conversation. Now, do you use Runway in your own company?
We do, yeah. So I use Rungway as we use Rungway as a team, and I think the point around anonymity is we use it constructive. So there are elements of it that are constructive. So it is obviously still a work tool. So we have anonymity and then moderation alongside that. So if things are sensitive, then they are routed to the right person within the organization to enable them to respond one to that individual if it's a very sensitive personal matter, but also if it's a thing that should then be made public in terms of how you reply to that. That is where the power of Rungway kicks in, and it's one to many, and so you're able to then show that response to everybody in one go, which from a leadership perspective means you have impact at scale, and then we can start to share that sentiment, trend, and the impact on those people, and moving them from resistors to advocates over time. So Rungway is not a scale organization. It doesn't have 5,000 employees, but we do use it ourselves in all the ways we encourage our clients to do as well.
How do you know that, and this is whether it's anonymous or not anonymous, how does your technology tell you that there really is an issue versus, usually because I work with a lot of companies, they'll do the surveys and, they'll get, I don't know, 8,000 replies and 7,999 say, love this company. One person says, the cafeteria food is horrible. So how does your technology determine whether it's an issue or just I'll call it a bad apple?
So we can see. So although you can post named or anonymously, and so some people do post named as well. It's an important point, but people do also post anonymously. We we never divulge to our client who that person is, but we know something about them in terms of maybe Ollie is in the UK. I'm in a certain department, so we can see individuals even though we don't know their name and who they are, and so we can start to see the scale of sentiment on certain themes. And so people can engage in, if I've posted about the food in the canteen, or potentially if we've changed a systems transformation isn't going well, or you're asking us to do too much in the middle of a transformation program as well as our BAU work, we can see how people engage in that. Is it an issue that affects one person, or is it an issue that's affecting 1,000 people, and how they're kind of responding to that, reacting to that. So that's where we can, and also what type of person is it affecting. So therefore the response in, it gives the leadership that view of who is impacted and how big an issue is it. And so our goal is not to give our clients too much data, but to say there are 2 or 3 things happening in your business, and this is why it's important. And that could be because it means a lot to the CEO as a theme, or it could be because it means a lot to a lot of people. There's 2 different ways of looking at that.
Okay, what about the question, the reluctance of on the sale? So we'd love to come into your company, Mr. Leader or Mrs. Leader, and show you what all your problems are. Isn't there a lot of reluctance? Like, wait a minute, it's much better if I just don't know. I'm just, because that's. Wait a minute, you guys are going to give me pain. So, what is that conversation look like, Ollie?
I think there are different ways you can address that. I think every leader in every company has probably 2 or 3 key initiatives that they're accountable for and are moving forward on. And in most cases, there is one of those where it's not quite going to plan. There's that kind of feeling or rumor that it isn't working, but people don't know why. And so the what you do not want as a senior leader is your initiatives to be torpedoed by resistors, if you like, or assassins of your change initiative. So it is Rungway isn't always negative either. Is a very important point. The majority of the sentiment on Rungway is positive. There will be pockets of challenge, we call it, which is ultimately, as a lead, you've got to lean into that, because as a leader, your role is ultimately to drive your organization forward, to change it, to transform it, to enable it to flourish in the future. If your organization doesn't change, it won't survive. But to do that, you need to have people on board with you to understand the rationale for that. So leadership IQ is that say that 15%, their data says 15% of employees understand the rationale for any change. Well, if that's only 15%, it isn't going to work, because you need them on board. Change is people ultimately, and you need people on board to enable that change to succeed. And there are lots of statistics about how if people are more advocates for your change initiatives, then it's more likely to succeed. So I can talk a lot about, yes, it will surface things, but it's important that you know that, because that means you can do something about it. And often we've come across scenarios where in big kind of for example, kind of big mergers post acquisition, what often senior groups are thinking about are important is not what is important in that situation to employees, and that means that cultures and teams don't integrate effectively. It can be what seem very small things, but they become very totemic and very big flashpoints.
Okay, can you give us a use case? And I would love to, because this is Team Anywhere, I'd love if you could choose a company that is, let's say, spread throughout either your UK or US or several countries, and what was a specific issue that came up, and how Rungway actually helped solve it.
Yeah, so there's one example which I can't name the company, but I can talk about them in terms of in the financial services space. They were a kind of organization that of about say 8,000 people, and they had acquired a significant competitor. And this point of this acquisition and then merger afterwards. So they wanted to form one team off the back of that transaction. And the senior team and the board were, as they try to merge the business together and create one culture and one team, we're getting a feeling that the value creation of that deal, which was many billions of dollars, wasn't coming to fruition because the teams weren't the people weren't coming together and integrating properly. So the board were very focused on technology, processes, systems, moving people across, everything kind of quite transactional about the process of integrating. But they knew there was something going wrong, and they brought Rungway in to help them with that. And very quickly we surfaced what felt to the board very small things. There were three things. One was that was blocking this integration and blocking people getting on board as advocates. One was that the senior leaders of the business that was the buyer and not the of the two businesses were consistently turning up late to meetings with the staff of the acquired business. So sending a very negative message. The second thing was that they referred to that business's product as legacy, i.e. not important, old, we're getting rid of it. And the third thing was actually the most totemic point of kind of grind in cultural integration, was one business had very professional headshots, almost done by a photographer in terms of their profile photos in the company. And the second business that was acquired had more avatar style images, a bit more personality, potentially doesn't have to be a photo, could be anything to represent them. And it created this problem of you're really corporate and stuffy and you're unprofessional and too relaxed. And it meant that they weren't coming together. So very quickly we could go to the board, change these three things, and they were able to get momentum back into that scenario. So that's just one example.
Yeah, and those are like simple tweaks, right?
Yeah.
Show up on time. Show up in time. Have the same pictures, and the middle one was, what was the second?
Don't refer to the products as legacy.
As a legacy, kind of,
yeah.
Boom. It's great.
It's really interesting, and that's obviously big scale, international business, many thousands of people. We've got a lot. I could talk for hours about different examples, but that's just one example.
I'd love to talk for hours about different examples.
Hey, we're taking a quick break to remind you to support our podcast by hitting the subscribe button and leaving us a review. Your feedback means the world to us, and it helps us continue to bring you more engaging and thought-provoking content for leadership and remote work.
I'd love for you to share with us what are some of the trends that you're seeing overall, because that's a very interesting story. Are there any trends that are coming? I think for you're saying Rungway, a lot of the stuff that comes in is very positive stuff. So I'd love for you to share like some of the positive things that you're seeing happening, especially in the virtual hybrid space.
I think it's really interesting. I think obviously the kind of the way of the kind of the working world and the dynamics of work have changed dramatically over the last few years for everybody. And so we have lots of data from the kind of hundreds of thousands of people who use Rungway across different companies. I guess some interesting ones in relation to maybe more positive and very interesting is, as an example, that Gen Zs or Gen Zs as we call them, yeah, more likely are increasingly likely. So 27% year-on-year increases in posting on Rungway outside of working hours and at the weekends. So that is a really interesting shift in terms of what Gen Zs are looking for versus millennials is very different in terms of connection to the senior team, the immediacy of feedback loops, whereas millennials are looking for more structured and at a moment in time feedback loop. So that the way that Rungway being always on, very organic and free text really fits nicely with Gen Z as one example.
So Gen Z is basically using the technology 24/7.
24/7, yeah. And so we also see that in distributed workforces that are maybe not desk-based workers, where people are using it off shift. And that can be 24/7 as well on their own device. So these are people who don't have a computer, don't necessarily even have a work email address. We see the value to them of being able to connect into the organization in a way they've never been able to do before is really powerful. In a distributed workforce like that, so if you're running that company, it's incredibly difficult for you to understand the daily experience and the impact that the decisions you make have on that. And so therefore you end up making decisions in a vacuum and you make bad decisions. But often in these companies, your workers out in the field are your products. They face your customer, you don't. And so that's that. We see people using their own device to give that feedback, raise ideas.
There are some companies that never ask their employees for feedback. Shame on them. There are some companies who like they'll do a survey, let's say every quarter or every week or every month. It sounds like the Runway platform it's more organic, which is when you have something to say, you say it.
Yeah.
That's very revolutionary, at least in terms of quote unquote, getting feedback.
It is, and it's handing, because it's organic and it's triggered by the individual. It is not. I think back to being in leadership positions before. Is you often pick the questions you want to hear the answer to, rather than hearing what's really going on in people's minds and hearing that now. And obviously that changes over time. And this isn't to say that, therefore, for the kind of senior team of a company, it creates work on a daily basis. Our job is deliberately to make it 10 or 15 minutes a week. That's why we will say these are the emerging things. These are the hot button things, whether good or bad, you should really lean in on now. And that obviously can change. It can be consistent, but moments in time lose that sense of the temperature changing in an organization and the understanding of why that is.
And then how do you, I don't know if the right word is train or engage, 8,000 people is, hello, 8,000 people, got this new platform. It's called Rungway. Whenever you have something to say it. All right, next to the strategy. How do you actually engage 8,000 people to use a tool like that?
It is lots of different dynamics. There is a key point is the marketing dynamic of any launch of a tool like that. Being very clear about the value proposition to the employee. Being very clear that it is still a work tool, and then ongoing engagement in terms of pulling people in terms of this is what your colleagues are saying. This is what's interesting. This is how a leader has responded into that. And it's that the virtuous circle of that dialogue occurring where it isn't one way. It is about dialogue, and it is one to many. Where we've had in a client previously a relatively new kind of graduate hire had the opportunity to present to their exco, their most senior group of people in the company, and posted on Rungway, can anyone give me any advice? What would I do? And this is a great positive story where in this global organization, 14 kind of business unit directors replied to this individual and gave them advice on, well, when I did it for the first time, I can empathize, but this is what I would recommend. And if you think in a company of that tens of thousands of people, that individual who's probably 24, 25 would never have access to those people, but got in an instant that moment of learning, and also everybody saw that happening. So the impact of that at scale across the organization is there was shared learning, but also there was our leaders care about helping out people who are on their way up in their career. So it can be those kind of positive moments as well of surfacing great moments that glue an organization together, and you live your values through moments like that.
So I could see, I think as I'm hearing you share it with the anonymity, so there's a person out there who has a concern. He shares his concern. You guys say, wow, we're hearing a lot of this stuff. Then the leaders will basically say, hey, everybody, we hear a concern. We don't even know who it's from, but we basically shared with this individual these things. And then complete anonymity. And the rest of the company goes, oh my gosh, they're really listening to us.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing. Yeah. And then the person.
And we're able to, for the leaders afterwards, we're able to show them the impact that has afterwards over time on everyone who is touched by that, in terms of we can see their sentiment change. So it is deliberately about action and change off the back of that.
Yeah. And what's the smallest company that you've worked with in terms of employees?
We've worked with some companies of several hundred people, but we have worked with companies up to 70,000 people as well. So kind of a really big spectrum, and it is all about that. I think that if you get that virtuous circle moving of leaders showing they're leaning in and being human in the way they respond to people, that's we talk about tone and timing. It's not about being polished; it's about being human. Then you can you can fuel that, and that then fuels other people to suggest things and raise questions as well.
What are you hearing? Final question. What are you hearing in terms of employees' satisfaction, this from a meta level, satisfaction, dissatisfaction with remote work?
I think it's a really interesting dynamic, and I'm sure you speak to everyone about this. Is the dynamic between employers and employees, and I think probably the best way I would describe it is that there has been a shift in control, and it's about a control shift. I would say in terms of the control prior to COVID was very much in the employer. You come to the office, you work 9 to 5 or equivalent, and employees complied with that. Whereas obviously now we live in a world where employees have gained control through the COVID era in terms of a sense of flexibility and wanting to do that. So I think there is probably an increased satisfaction, if you like, with that flexibility from an employee perspective, but employers are concerned by that in terms of is that impacting on productivity? But the worst thing you can do as an employer is panic and go, I want you in the office every day. I think what you need to reach is that almost a value proposition point of this is how we'd like to bring people together and why, and there needs to be seen as a mutual benefit to that. But I think definitely there is an enormous shift in terms of going virtual. Some people, but I think also something that people are feeling is that feeling of everything is a million miles an hour and it's not stopping. I know my personal experience, and I see that in people I work with, is we've gone from, we used to have blocks of time where we would feel like we would be sitting, thinking, doing things, to we probably have blocks of time of every 30 minutes to an hour on a video call, it feels like. And that's a very different way of operating, which is quite exhausting. So on some levels, the control is positive, but I think the nature of the way we interact with people more remotely is negative in some ways as well.
Yeah, I would think, without promoting your product like crazy right now, is that in a virtual or hybrid world, what might be missing would be this level of, here I am in, I don't know, in Maine or in Wales or something like that. I'm the only person in Maine or Wales, and I bet people don't care about what I'm thinking. And with a product like yours, that person is going to feel much more connected to the company because he feels listened to, and there were, obviously just because people are together doesn't mean that they're going to get listened to, but it would seem to me that, what we really need to be very successful in this virtual hybrid world is kind of the both. So a way to know that I'm cared for, and communicated to, and also have my freedom so I can live in Maine or in Wales, let's just say.
And also as a leader, therefore, you don't have to have people in a building to hear from them, to your point.
Right.
But also you need a way to hear from everybody, and in a way that you create this inclusive but safe way for people to feel that they can raise their hand and there is no repercussions on them. And I think that's going back to one of your earlier questions, it is really important to create that safe space so that at scale, you as a leader can understand and then enter that dialogue on what's really important to people.
Wow. Really cool stuff. I just love the innovation. So where can we find out more about you, Ollie, and about Rungway?
Well, you can happily go to rungway.com in terms of our website and find out more. But equally, I'm on LinkedIn. So I'm Ollie Lingwood-Craddock on LinkedIn. So feel free to connect with me and reach out. Happy to share more.
Great. All right, Ollie, thank you so much. This is very informative, very insightful. And thank you for your time. If you've loved this podcast, I've loved this conversation. Please share this podcast with your friends, your colleagues, your family. And we look forward to seeing you next time on our next episode of Team Anywhere.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more engaging content from our podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share the video with your friends so they can join the conversation too.